On this episode, we talk with Sam Gualtieri about creating a fun, welcoming environment at your church. Well, hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast. I am your host, Kendall Connor, and our goal with this podcast is simple. It is to have conversations that empower healthy churches, and we're going to do just that today. We have a great episode planned for you as we have the one and only Sam Gualtieri joining us today. If you don't know Sam, he is a visual artist and an entrepreneur that has over 15 years experience in visual design and marketing and brand development. He is the founder of a company called Pop Signs, which makes fun handheld signs designed to elevate the welcome experience at churches. You may have used these at your own church or seen these on Instagram. They're a lot of fun. Through Pop Signs, Sam, he helps churches to create an atmosphere that instantly makes visitors feel at home and turns first-time guests into lasting members of the community. And today, it's going to be a lot of fun. We get to dive into the topic of creating a fun, welcoming environment at your church. It's going to be a good one. And so without further ado, let's jump into my talk today with Sam. Well, hey there, Sam. Thanks so much for jumping on here with us.
Glad to be here, Kendall. Nice to meet you. Nice to be on the pod.
Oh, yeah. We got on here. Now, look, we just read off your public bio. And so something that we always like to ask and honestly just have a little bit of fun as we get started is we read the public bio, but what's something that doesn't make that public bio, maybe that all your family and friends would know about you?
This is good. So recently I moved to Michigan from Miami. I'm born and raised in Miami. Now I'm in Michigan. This is where my wife is from. And believe it or not, I've started to take quite an acclimation to, the Michigan way of life. So I've gone full throttle. I mean, I'm all outdoors.
Yeah. I
love the countryside. We go out, on the lakes. I'm a beach guy. I'm an ocean guy trying to swim in lakes. So that's a fun one to see. I got my crossbow. I went out hunting for the first time this year.
Wow.
So this Miami boy is, doing everything he can to acclimate to the Michigan lifestyle out this way.
You're figuring it out. I'm picturing I'm trying to think the commercials, like the pure Michigan commercials, right? Is that the lifestyle that you're living these days?
It does. It is. But you know what? I try to save us from anyone else figuring that out on their own. So I like to tell anybody who asks, it's a terrible, dry, frozen tundra up here. There's nothing to offer. So, don't come up here unless you want to. Don't come here unless you want to hunt for your own meat and, live off the land.
Oh, that's too funny. All right. That's I don't know. I consider myself. I'm just beginning to become a little bit of an outdoorsman. Just starting to get into camping and just starting to get into some of those things, fishing and things. Maybe hunting.
Well, you got the plaid shirt, so you're already halfway there.
Kind of inspire me with that crossbow.
Got to do it. It's connects you with nature in a new way.
Oh, I love it. No, that's awesome. No, that was the perfect response to that. That's and I didn't know that about you. So I want to jump in, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your journey and kind of what has brought you to where you are today with Pop Signs.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's funny. This is actually my first podcast that I've been on in years. I feel like I went to sleep in 2020 and woke up and all of a sudden it's like everyone's got a podcast. I'm thinking about getting my own podcast now just to join the club.
I kind of feel honored that you chose us to make this appearance. So
you might have awoken something in me. I might have to figure this whole thing out and figure out how I can get something going. I think it's a good way to just have good conversations with people you really want to meet.
Yeah.
But I love this, I love the opportunity to get to share a little bit of my story. And, really thinking back, like, I think the thing that's kind of important to know about me, if you don't know me, is that forever I've always kind of felt like this sort of outsider kind of person. And ever since I was little, like, things I was interested in, like art and, invention, like the things that, require a lot of thought. And it took me a long time to even figure out that that's really what I cared about. But I've always been a thinker. I've always been someone who likes to tinker with things. And, church has also been like a core thread throughout my story. My parents were ministers, and so I've kind of been brought along through a lot of church, but I've never really felt like I was part of it, if that makes sense. And so searching for like that belonging, or that feeling of like, this is where I belong, has always been something that I've personally dealt with. And, and so I think that created an identity in me that I've carried through all of my experiences with church, later in life as well. Just feeling like an outsider and looking for where I belong and how I fit in. And, I think I understood, even in my teenage years, that like church, or at least the idea of church that existed then, just wasn't something that was designed for people like me, or the people that I, was naturally like inclined to become friends with, people who were interested in the same things that I was. And so that was a challenge for me. As far as like my relationship with church, really my relationship with God, and it really created a unique perspective for me, and how I've approached that. And so, art, design, these things are very important to me in my life. My background is in creative. I was a maker. I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts in college, and I pursued an art career. That's actually something that's, still to this day, one of the most important things to me. But then, commercial art became something very, very intriguing to me. And I went the agency route, and I've done a lot in that, learned a lot about marketing and design. And so right about the time when I got married, my wife and I, we were searching for a new church. And this is when, this church idea, what church meant, was sort of shifting, around that time. This was around 2014, 2015. And my wife and I started to help launch a church in Miami called Blue Church. And it was really a special time in our life. And we were so excited about being able to be part of something that was being thought about differently from the ground up. It was a really cool group of people back then. And we were trying to do church in a different way.
I think a lot of listeners would probably recognize that name, and probably a word that comes to mind with VU is very creative, right?
Yeah, I would absolutely say that. Everything from the top down was very thought through, and it was a very different approach from anything that I had experienced to that day. And we dove right in. And one of the things that I got to be part of was, the welcome experience, and how to make people feel welcome there. And it was actually pretty interesting to me because, our leadership team came up with this idea that, we wanted to just sort of solve this problem that I didn't even know really existed at the time, which was just, let's try to make people feel welcome when they come to church. And let me take a sip of water here. We're just trying to find a way to make it feel inviting. And I don't know, if this is something that everyone feels, but like I was saying, for me, I think it was something that was easy for me to understand, that going to church was an uncomfortable experience. And so it presented a problem that we wanted to fix. We wanted to make it not uncomfortable.
I volunteer at my church, and I help a lot with the guest experience team, the welcome team, and we have people who are out there, and we have people who are volunteers that are their sole responsibility on Sunday morning is trying to greet that first time guest right, and just make them feel at home, make them feel welcome, because it can be scary going to a new church, right?
Yeah, and you know what? It's good that you know that, because I would say maybe now it's a little bit more known, but I think that hasn't always been the case. And I still think you find a lot of churches that just don't even recognize that as even a problem.
Well, they feel at home, right? Yeah,
they exactly.
Feel at home there. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of church leaders are kind of, focused on solving other problems. They're focused on, does the preaching come across the right way? Or is our do we have the most up to date stage design, the LED screen, our lyrics, the worship, I think there's all these other problems. And then there's even higher level problems that a lot of church leaders focus on too, which is like,
Yeah.
the org chart or, the missions, program or whatever these other things are that are very high level that don't always get down to trickle down to that human to human contact, which is very important. But that's where Pop Signs, the idea started, was like, hey, we were trying to solve this problem. People aren't feeling welcome when they come to church. How can we change that? And we came up with this simple idea, like, hey, let's just make these signs that are colorful, friendly, have cool phrases on them, and just hold them up for people while they're driving by, walking into church, and just try to make them feel this overwhelming feeling of being welcome, of that you're invited here, you belong here. And to be honest, like, we didn't know how it was going to turn out. It was just an idea. We created these really simple signs, and the results just spoke for themselves. It's like the smiles that we saw on people's faces when we opened our first launch Sunday. It's just like remarkable, and we were able to capture a lot of that in photography as well. And so you could just see, just the joy on people's faces coming into something like church is just, it's not natural. Just didn't seem like likely.
So I kind of want to pause you right there, and just for anyone who doesn't know, anyone who's listening who maybe isn't familiar with this concept of what a pop sign is, this is something that you were able to start when you were first working with a church launch, and so it's an actual handheld sign, right, that you would put into the hands of greeters, and it'll say different welcoming things, and it really just kind of tries to bring a smile. What are some of the things that these signs will say?
That smile, it's Sunday, welcome home, you're looking amazing today. Just fun, anything that can get a smile. That was our whole goal, was just make someone smile when they walk in, and that's those. So fun, little catchy little phrases.
That. And we actually use these at our church, and I feel like I see them everywhere, and I definitely see them in pictures that pop up on my Instagram feed from other churches. I mean, I feel like they're all over the place now. And so this idea that you kind of created as you were helping to launch this church, you've been able to now translate that into a business that you're able to get this to. You're equipping churches all over the country.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I think that's such a fun part of the story too, is because what we realized was something that worked for us would work for so many other people as well.
Yeah.
The minute we started posting these on Instagram, the comments section would just fill up with people asking, where did you guys get these?
Yeah.
And, we talk about this idea when I'm talking to other entrepreneurs, we talk about this idea of market fit. You could have the best idea, or you think it's the best product, or you think it's the best service, but ultimately the market decides, And so right away we knew that there was something special because the response was there. And so we just kicked off a really simple website and started small, and it grew steadily over time. But it was really cool seeing how quickly that idea could be adopted and duplicated across, the nation, now the world. But just by taking that same concept and just inserting it into the same situation over and over and over again, how well it resonated with people all over. And I think that that's something that's really special to look back on and see that this kind of bland or boring or kind of like non-welcoming or non-existent thing has now shifted into something that's kind of anticipated, and maybe even like part of the planning of a lot of churches when they are starting out or trying to, reach their communities in a more engaging way.
No, I love it. And it's such a simple idea. And, just knowing the popularity of these, it got me really excited to have you to come on here talking today, because, it just shows me that sometimes it's just the simplest ideas, but it's really the intentionality. It's the heart behind trying to create a great welcome for people. And so I knew that you would be able to share some insights with us today on why that's important and things like that. And so one question that I have for you is just, to me, the idea of coming to a church for the very first time, or, even returning for the first time in a long time,
Yeah.
or, for some, just getting up and getting around that group of, a large group of people on a Sunday morning. Any of those things may feel intimidating,
Yeah.
or the idea of what church is like may even be considered boring to someone who's coming to church for the first time, or,
Right.
again, for the first time in a long time. How would you say that churches can shift this perception? How can a church create an environment that feels warm, that feels fun, inviting? Could you speak to that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if you boil it down to, I think what's most important, it's thinking about the people who are actually coming to your church and your community. I can
Yeah,
speak broadly to what I think works across the board for a lot of churches. Like, we're saying this idea of pop signs just works, and I can share why I think that works. But I think essentially, before you get to the idea of pop signs or whatever else it is, it comes down to asking yourself the question, who are the people that come here? How do they feel? What issues are they dealing with? What environment are they in, and where am I trying to take them to? And then
yeah,
you can create the tools that help you to, bridge the gap from point A to point B. And so for us, back when we were coming up with this idea, we're thinking like, people are, you know, in a space during the week which is full of stress, full of busyness, full of a lot of things that aren't fun, a lot of things that might be driving them towards the wrong feelings. And at the same time, they're competing with a ton of other like very enticing activities
yes,
that someone could take. And so how do
yeah,
we convince them to feel, differently when they come to a place like church? And so I think it just starts with thinking about the problem. So there's so many things that you can do to help create a feeling of welcome, a feeling of being invited. And they're a lot of times they're the smallest things. Kendall, can you think of a time when you've walked into a party or a room and maybe, didn't necessarily feel like the people there wanted you there? Like,
wow, yeah, sure.
if you can,
It's a gut wrenching feeling, right? You're like, "What? This was a mistake. I should have just stayed in the car."
right. And it's not even anything obvious. I mean, if you actually try to break down what it is, it's not like anyone stood there and said, "Hey, get out of here." Like no
Right,
one
right.
stood there and said, "You're not welcome here." It was really more maybe a feeling of being invisible, or maybe feeling
Mm,
like you weren't noticed. So it's like a lack of something more than it is like this active, like,
yes,
response. And so I think that's the way it is for a lot of people who are coming to church, who feel maybe a little unwelcome or have that little bit of a gut feeling or an instinct that maybe this isn't the right place for me.
yeah,
And so immediately it tells me that as a church or an organization, we need to be on the offense about that. And we need to be obvious that this is a place for you. And so you
yeah,
have to do that by engaging the senses. You have to do that visually. You have to do that, with signage. You have to do that with, you know, uh, decor and creating a space that feels warm, that feels welcome. If you were going to throw a party, you would think about all these elements of
yes,
how to make it feel the most. If you're throwing a holiday party, you're going to put Christmas decorations up. You're going to put Christmas lights up. If you're throwing a birthday party, you're going to have certain things that create that vibe. And
yes,
so the same goes for, that church welcome. You want to really emphatically lead with an obvious, presentation that says, "Hey, you're welcome here." And so that could be something as basic as holding a sign that says, "You belong here." To be honest, it's like one of our best sellers is the sign that says, "You belong here." And,
yeah,
and it does a lot of the work for you. But things like, I love the idea of taking spaces that could be like stone cold or stoic spaces and turning them into environments that feel like home. So whether that's using, armchairs and rugs and lighting that mimics the feel of being like a living room, for instance, it feels a
yeah,
lot warmer, a lot closer than walking into a corporate environment. It creates that same warmth of walking into someone's living room, having sitting down and have a cup of coffee with somebody.
yeah. You know, making people feel at home. You said this. It's the simple things, right? It's showing intentionality. I try to express that to our church's volunteers so often. Is just if you can show people that you care, it makes them, it puts them at ease, right? It helps to relieve some of that stress that they have about coming in there. Just letting them know that, like, hey, we planned for you to be here. Well, yeah,
Exactly.
if you're inviting people to your home, like you clean up your home, right? Like you have it looking just right. You mentioned decorations and things like that. You prepare for people to be there and for people to. That's what makes a guest feel welcome. I think the same thing translates to Sunday mornings, right? It's just, hey, we want you to be here, and what communicates that we prepared for you to be here. We made sure that. We got greeters in place. We made sure that you're not going to have to figure out where to go on your own. We made sure that, that the environment is just right. And to me, I think all of those things just slowly just chip away at that hard heart, that has come in and just felt like, okay, like, is this the place for me? And just, sets the tone for the whole day for them to hear that message, to hear that music, all of those things. Just a welcome goes so far.
It does. Agree? It really does. It prepares the heart for somebody to experience the rest of what you know, are putting on that day. You want people to come into church and have a heart of, not being distracted, not being upset or aggravated, so that they can receive what's, being spoken to them, the word that's being spoken by the pastor, to enter into a space of worship. And a lot of times you just, something simple as just saying, hey, so glad you're here. This place is for you. Hey, let me take you to, let me make this as easy for you as possible. Whether you go there all the time or it's your first time or first time in a long time, that sets the tone, and you're going to get a better response from people, and they will receive more and they'll engage more.
100%. I know that you've seen firsthand how a great welcome can really impact somebody's experience when they come to church. What would you say are the key elements, the key details that every church could focus on, that people who are there for the first time can kind of feel at ease? Are there any quick tips or ideas that make sure are in place?
Yeah. Well, we always recommend that people start thinking about the journey of an attendee, someone who wants to come to your church. Start thinking about where their journey actually starts. And for so many people, it starts at home, on their phone, on their computer, checking out your website, looking you up on Google. A lot of people start with, hey, best church in, their neighborhood. So what are they seeing when they type that in? What are they, when they go to your Google Places account, like when they see that, all the photos and the reviews. Does your church have reviews? I bet it does. You may not know it has reviews, but it does.
But they're there, right?
And there's photos, like people are searching. What are they looking for? They're looking for little signals, little hints and clues that tell them, hey, this is a place I want to go. There's a staggering statistic that says that people's first impression is actually formed within like 1/10 of a second of seeing or, experiencing something. So, it creates a very urgent response from us if we want to make sure that we are helping ourselves to the best first impression possible. So when people see your website or they see your Google Places, page, or they go to your Instagram account, they're looking for clues that are going to help them and create an informed decision. What do I think of this place? Can I see myself going there? Is it something that seems easy, or is there a lot of friction or hurdles, whether it's internally or externally, to get me there? And so I think one of the first things you can do is curate that experience. Think about the person who's visiting. What do they need to see? What do they need to not see? And a lot of those things are photos, pictures of people looking friendly, smiling, showing that community is something that's part of your vision, showing that welcoming new people or creating a welcoming environment is something that is part of your plan. And that does a lot. And then mirroring that in actuality. You want that same experience to be what people experience when they get there.
Yeah, everything's going to fail if they you put one experience on Google and you have another experience when they actually show up, right?
Exactly.
It's got to match.
If you told me it was going to be, real lively and exciting, and I drive up and I see crickets, I'm going to keep on driving. And that's not, again, we're trying to think about how to reach people. And so we have to get this idea out of our head right away that, oh, we're catering too much to, we should cater to people because that's who Jesus came here to reach, right? And so we want to try to reach people where they are and then help move them, like maybe on your 10th visit, you're going to not be so moved by whether or not someone said hi to you or smiled at you the right way. But the first time, you're definitely going to be sensitive to that. So little touch points like having people outside. If you have a climate where people can be outside, and even if you're not in a climate where people can be outside, man, it shows so much care and it creates so much energy when there are bodies outside. Whether they're waving people in or holding up a pop sign. It creates an emotional response to people that, wow, like something's happening here. So that's important.
I feel like that's something that our church does really well. We have people out in the parking lot, and a lot of times they are holding up signs, just as you're describing, or they at least will have signs out there in the parking lot that are helping people get where they need to go. But I often think we don't, this is probably an every Sunday thing, but we have a sign that says like something like honk if you're excited to be here when people are driving in, and people love it. I mean, it's like the funniest thing to go out there and to witness, because these people are rolling in and they're laying on that horn, and it's just so funny. Again, maybe our neighborhood isn't quite as fond of it as of the idea as we are, but
you probably got some
like I said, it is a fun occasional thing. And when people are coming in, I love that you said having people outside goes such a long way, because even when it's colder, I think our church volunteers, we have hot hands, the little hand warmers when it's colder outside, for them to stick in their coat pockets, just to be able to keep that going, because it makes a big deal opening the door for someone, just saying like, hey, I want one of the first things that you experience when you come to our church to be us doing something for you, not asking something from you. Right. There's little small, having that smiling face outside, it makes a big difference.
It's a visual cue, and it creates an emotional peak. And I
think so.
I think that those are so vital and important to creating that experience that someone's going to remember. Have you ever, are you familiar with the book Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath?
I don't think so. Tell me about it.
Man, so this book is really cool. It actually really helped shape a lot of the thinking around what makes pop signs so effective. Because what it does, this book is all about the idea that life is made up not just of, when you think back on your life, like you don't remember every experience that you've been through, but you remember are these kind of milestone moments, whether they're peaks or valleys, but really good, really high emotional times and really low emotional times. And the concept of this book is that we don't have to just wait for all these moments to just happen over life, but we can actually engineer them and create moments that help us to, things to stand out in our life. And so, whether that's like the idea of a hotel creating an experience for a guest that would be over the top in most cases for people, and say that's unrealistic for me to pull off. But by doing that, that hotel is actually creating a memory that's like a standout memory for someone. And they're going to remember their experience with that hotel forever because of something that they thoughtfully created and curated for their guests. And these are things that you can, repeat. And so the idea is that, you can kind of curate or engineer these like peak moments of people's lives by creating an emotional high for them. And so one of those things is, the idea of like, you could put someone outside of your, your church with a pop sign and create a fun little celebration moment for people.
Yeah.
And they're going to remember that because it's an emotional peak. It might be the emotional peak of their week. It might be the emotional peak of their day, but it definitely like creates like this, this marker. It's a milestone. And so, yeah, just to bring it full circle with what you're saying, like there's things that we need to do as communities that are trying to create, trying to reach people and try to connect with people.
Yes.
That are easy tools, but actually have like a lot of like thought behind it and actually work for real reasons, beyond just like, oh, it's a cool sign,
Yes. Yeah. It goes beyond the cool factor. I think in a lot of ways, anything that you do with intentionality to help people feel seen and loved when they come to church is just, they're investments that, they just pay off in such big ways.
Yeah.
I recently heard a story. I tell this in our volunteer huddles that we have on Sunday morning. I've told this story before, where our church, I'm a part of a church plant that's been around for just over 10 years. We recently hit a 10-year milestone. And I heard a story that 10 years ago, someone who's been coming to our church for 10 years, they said that when they first came in that first year, that someone, when they walked in at the front door, complimented their outfit, and it literally made that little bit of just someone showing some kindness, showing a little, showing that love when they first came to church. It was their first interaction. 10 years later, they still remembered that interaction with that greeter. And it said, and they said that it made a difference in them coming back to church. Someone who was not in church, someone who, was looking for somewhere to come, and they were, feeling uneasy. That little bit of kindness from that greeter, they're still holding on to that and coming to church 10 years later.
Can you imagine like something so simple as a compliment, something so simple as going out of your way to just make someone feel a little less on edge? I hear stories like that all the time. Kendall, one of my favorite stories is a buddy of mine. He's a buddy of mine now. But when I met him, he was actually one of the first people that came to church when we were planning in Miami. And his story is that, he was in a very, very like bad time in his life, and he knew he needed to change. And someone had recommended him that he came to church and gave him an invite. And as tough and as uncomfortable as it was for him to do that, he drove himself to church, and he wanted to come, and he got himself all the way there, was sitting in his parking lot, and like he was contemplating leaving, and he was just like full of anxiety. He's like, all the thoughts are going through his head. What am I going to do? Like, these people I'm at church. They're not going to, I'm just, I'm not the church type. This isn't for me. And he looks up, and there's someone there standing there with a sign that says, "You belong here." And it just changed his mind, and it got him to take his first step and walk through. And that changed the course of his life. I mean, the guy ends up, giving his life to Jesus and becoming a really, really high level leader on our team. Amazing. And to this day, one of my good friends. And just like stories like that I hear all the time. And I think it just proves the point that people are out there looking, but people don't always have what it takes to motivate themselves to go all the way. And so what we can do as a church and as a body of Christ is just be looking for opportunities to be people's cheerleaders. If someone woke me up at 5:00 in the morning every day and said, "You can do it, you're great, like, let's go get to the gym and everything's going to be awesome," like, that would be incredible. And so maybe I don't have, that. Maybe I don't, but I be that for someone on the weekend. I can be that for someone, who's trying to better their life and get to church on Sunday. So
that's so good, and super encouraging. Just talking through this, and just it reminds me of why, for why we do what we do. It reminds, as ministry leaders, as people who are, whether you're volunteering or ever on staff or however you're serving in your church communities, it just is super encouraging to remember that, hey man, we're helping people to. Ultimately, we're just helping to roll out the red carpet, so to speak, to help them get to what is ultimately can change their life, and that's getting to have that moment with Jesus. And so,
so well
it's very
said.
important.
That's so well said.
Yeah,
exactly. That's one of the phrases that we use a lot. Is like, hey, we just want to help you give your guests a red carpet experience. And when you think of it that way, it's like, oh yeah, why wouldn't we want to do that?
Yeah, I love that. As we're talking about this, I'm thinking about all the different volunteers that you can get involved just being able to implement things like this, greeters and being holding a pop sign, whatever. Do you think that this is a good opportunity, a good way to get people involved?
And more than you could ever imagine. One of the cool things about holding up a sign, again, as simple as it sounds, but holding up a sign gives somebody something that they can do. And who qualifies for that? Everyone qualifies for that. Yeah. You might not be, the most technically inclined person. You don't, can't figure out how to run the sound booth or the production team. Maybe you can't carry a tune and sing in the worship department, but everybody can pick up a sign and welcome people into church and create a great atmosphere. And, people question this kind of idea sometimes, like, is a sign necessary? And no, it's not. And, maybe not for every environment. Like if you have 10, 20 people come into a house meeting, it's not necessary that you stand out there with a sign. It might be a little bit out of context. But I think in sort of like larger groups or groups where it's easier to kind of fly under the radar, or groups where there is that little sense of awkwardness if someone doesn't kind of break the ice for you, I think it's very, very helpful. In fact, there's a lot of downsides of not having a tool like pop signs, because the reality is that people are, human, and that's there's a lot of positives with that. But sometimes we have trouble like controlling our body language, or I might not smile at everyone that comes in,
right?
And I might not, someone might be walking up and see me from the distance and not really know what I'm there, why am I there, why am I standing there? Sure. And it can be off-putting, but having a sign that says "I'm welcome" or "I'm so glad you're here," it solves that problem as well.
No, that's a really good point. It's having people in the right places doesn't necessarily guarantee that they're always going to be communicating intentionally or unintentionally, right? That that create a welcoming environment. That makes a lot of sense. So getting people involved, I feel like is a great plus for creating that fun welcome, creating a welcoming environment. Just getting people involved, I feel like the people side of showing the people side of your church for guests, I feel like is an area that, it's just going to pay off. And it's very rewarding too. I mean, we're sitting here sharing stories, right, of people who have come to church and felt a great welcome. And those same volunteers in your church can feel those same wins. And so I love the idea of being able to get more people involved just to help people to feel welcome at church.
And teams grow. It's a fact. Teams do grow when they start implementing something like this, because we hear it all the time from our customers. They come back and say, hey, like, we started using these and people love the idea, and all of a sudden we've got a great welcoming team just because it made it easy for people to stand up and do that.
No, I love that. And and it's just dropping in creative things like that. I feel like sometimes can just be like pouring rocket fuel on for growing a team, right? Just being able to try something new and something fresh, and people are going to recognize that right away. I love that about it. We've touched a little bit on fun, and that's something that I feel like you're familiar with, because you're trying to create a fun environment with these pop signs. Fun is something that I feel like we at my own church we try to have that fun atmosphere when people come. But there's going to be some listeners who are hearing this today, and fun isn't something that is not necessarily associated always with church. And they may want to make sure that they're striking that right balance between, okay, we want to be engaging and we want to be welcoming, but we also want to make sure that we have the right for something, for coming to church and for worship. Can you speak to that, striking that right balance between those two things?
Yeah. And I think that it's really a beautiful thing that churches can be so different and diverse depending on where you go. Sure. And because God made all of us so different, the communities that we gather in are going to reflect, who we are, right? Yes. So I can understand how some communities are going to be a little more stoic or a little bit more maybe want to use the word reverent, or, maybe just present things a little bit differently. But I
Sure.
think, again, it comes back down to solving those like basic problems. And I think
Yes.
that everyone that goes to church wants to feel seen. I think everyone who goes to church wants to know where the kids department is,
Yes.
I think that having something like pop signs solves problems, whatever level of fun your tolerance is for. And that's the great thing about design, right? Like good design, it's invisible, it fits into its environment. And so
Yes.
if you want to dial up the fun, dial it up with the design. If
Yes.
you want to be more professional, a little bit more stoic, or a little bit more whatever is your flavor, like that can be reflected in the design. But the tool and what it's for and what it creates, it stays the same. I would, whether I was going to, I mean, to be honest with you, what's crazy is that we actually have like Lutheran churches, we have Catholic churches that purchase pop signs. So it's like you can see that the problem still exists and that's trying to be solved, throughout all these different, types of assemblies. So,
Right.
Yeah, I think it's just a different way of looking at the problem. And I think one of the interesting studies that I've read is Pew Research. They did this study where they found that 79% of people interviewed said that they chose the church that they attend based on how welcoming it was for them.
Wow.
And so, that's going to be across. That's not just evangelical churches. That's across church in general in America. And so that is a big statistic when you're trying to figure out, well, what's the needle that needs to turn? Like if I'm trying to figure out why isn't my church growing, or why aren't people who are coming here visiting staying? Well, maybe the first thing we need to look at is like, do they feel welcome when they're here? And so if we can solve that problem first, maybe it allows us to kind of get to some of the other dominoes that we're working on as well.
No, I love that. And something that I think is so true is it doesn't matter the style of your church, right? Everyone wants to feel welcomed when they come to church, right? That's something that translates to all different kinds of churches. So I love that you spoke to that. Something else, one tiny detail that maybe we haven't talked through that much is we talked about the style, the design, changing the way that it actually looks. Would you say that the visuals and kind of the creativity that goes into those, is that an important element to a warm welcome at a church?
Absolutely. I'm an artist, I'm a designer, so
Right.
I might
know
have
you care about this.
I care about it a lot. But I also I try to be unbiased when I look at it, and I do tend to. What's cool about our site is that we offer a lot of pre-made designs. We have hundreds of designs that you can just pick right off of our site, and then we also allow people to upload their own artwork or type in their own grades, and we get tons of amazingly designed signs.
Yes.
But I think that design is of the utmost importance, because you could have the right motive, the right intention, but you could be communicating the wrong thing, right? You could be intending to be friendly, but your design could be a little off-putting. And so one of our strengths that we consider our strength of ours, so we put a lot of thought into creating the right experience with the phrases that we choose to kind of curate. One of the early phrases that we came out with was, "You can sit with us." And that was kind of like this play on the Mean Girls quote, "You can't sit with us." And that became one of our really popular phrases that was selling, because it fits in with kind of like this, we use the term design. Maybe it doesn't just come down to like the colors and the fonts and the design, the style of it, but it's also like the tone. It's the casualness of it. It's how, some people have, tried to be too, like, I think overly like professional or overly like spiritual, God bless you today as you enter this place, or, like, I think the intention is right. But again, I think like you can do a lot more with curating that experience through design, whether that's just the design, the style, the colors, the way fits just right, but also the phrases that you're using and the way that you're kind of like trying to just create these like quick moments of like, that's a great thank you for that, a quick compliment, a quick hello.
Yes, and even beyond the casual nature of that I feel like is a way to be welcoming. Isn't that something that you mentioned, going back to showing up to the party when you walk in and you don't feel welcome? Isn't that what you wish someone would say? Is,
Right.
hey, we're so glad that you're here, or come sit with us. Making them feel welcome, and those
Yeah.
little snappy statements, just go a really long way to make people feel at
Not
home.
only does it feel great when you do experience that,
Yeah.
but again, I just challenge you to like try to consider what it's like for someone when those things don't exist. If you
Mm-hmm.
came to my house, I said, "Hey,
Yes.
come over to my house. I'm having a dinner tonight, having a party. Come on over." And you came over, the front door was closed, and
Yes.
I was down in the basement, and you're wandering around the first floor of my house trying to figure out what's going on.
Wow.
You would feel so uncomfortable because
Yes.
it's a new environment for you. It's not your home. And so, but if I greet you there at the door, I'm so glad you're here. Like you made it.
Yeah.
That changes the context. Now I have the confidence to step into your place and feel as comfortable as your closest friends, your closest family. And that's one of the things we say. It was like, Pop Signs is
100%.
here to make people feel like family from their first
Yeah.
experience. And that's, I think, the goal.
No, I love that. That's so good. Something that we ask everybody when they come on the show, and I want to make sure that we have time for this, is in your opinion, what is one essential component of a healthy church?
It's a loaded question.
It's a big one. It's a big one.
Totally. I I don't want to just blow smoke here. To be honest with you, I think that there's a lot of components that go into a healthy church, and I think it's a sliding scale, right? It's like you pick any church in America or around the world, really, and there's going to be elements of health in certain areas and elements of unhealth, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I think it comes down to like the leadership and what's their what's their modus operandi when it comes to attacking a problem. Are they thoughtful about figuring out where those problems lie, or are
Sure.
they sort of non-confrontational and just want to kind of sweep things under the rug and just kind of pretend like things
Yeah.
don't exist? I think that being thoughtful and intentional about seeking out problems and then wanting to solve them has got to be like the number one,
Yeah.
like, thing that is inside of you in order to have a healthy place, because there's always going to be problems. We have to be
Yes.
comfortable with that, and we
Yeah.
have to be comfortable with seeking them out and then ready to solve them, which I think when you're doing
Well,
that
and it sounds
constantly.
like being creative in that way is kind of what led to you being able to come up with pop signs, right? Trying
Absolutely.
to figure out a problem and get creative with it.
Yeah, I think so.
No, that's awesome. As we wrap up, something that we always love to do is kind of a rapid fire final five. And I'd love to jump into those if you're up to the challenge today.
Hit me with your best shot. I'm
All
not
right, I'm here
even.
for it. Let's
Go
let's
for
let's
it.
jump into it. What now? You've already given us one of these, so maybe you can repeat that one if necessary. What is one book on this subject that you would recommend to church
I'll give you
leaders?
two. Power of Moments
Okay.
was the book I talked about earlier. It's by Chip and
Yeah.
Dan Heath. I love that book, and you'll learn a lot with it. Another really great book that I love is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And I think that book just really helps us to frame ourselves in the mindset of, hey, there's a lot of different things that we can do with our time, but how do we say no to all of the things that are not not super important and go after
Yeah.
the one thing that's the most essential? And I think that even if we're talking about church leadership, it's a really good picture where you have a finite amount of energy, you have a finite amount of time, you have a finite amount of you know uh, things that we can accomplish. And
Yeah.
so if we're running in 50 different directions at once, you're not going to
Yes.
get very far. So saying no and eliminating more of those things and just focusing on the one main thing, you're going to get way more out of it.
100%. No, that's so good. The next one is what is the last thing that you listen to on Spotify or Apple Music?
This changes on the daily. Whatever it takes,
Same.
to get the mood going. Because let me tell you, I've got, on any given day, there's a lot of things going on that could bring my mood down. So we've got to pep it up. We've got to get something going on there. I mean, I've
Got to
got
keep it going.
everything on there. I listen to a lot of country now, going back to my Midwest
Michigan is changing you,
change
right?
here.
Getting out
Yeah,
there in nature.
because the message I think is really good. You listen to a lot of music, whether it's pop or whatever people are listening to these days, whatever's popular out there. The messages just aren't really all that great and uplifting. But most of the time, when you listen to country music, the messages are pretty good. So
Pretty good.
we focus on family and the time that we're spending together, and not just about the material things that we want to do. So I like some country music. My wife has
I
started me
love
on
it.
that journey.
That's awesome. What would you say these days is your favorite piece of technology or software?
I have a huge battle with technology because as much as we love it, like it can consume so much of us. So I can't get through my day without my laptop and my phone. Um,
Yeah.
but man, I don't know. Do I say like I love my phone or my I don't know. I sometimes I wish we could
How
do
about
without it.
on the design side for software? Any favorites there?
Man, I love a lot of design tools. I mean, I'm still like an old school dude. I still use my Photoshop and Illustrator. So many people are
Oh
now
yeah,
using like
yeah, go for it.
Canva and things like that. So yeah, I'm still a Photoshop Illustrator guy. I'm holding on to my legacy editing capabilities.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm 20 plus year Adobe user, so yeah, I'm right there with you, man. What would you say is or maybe some advice that has stuck with you over the years?
um, Great. There's a quote that I love. It's that speed is not the most important thing. It's all about direction. So you can go as fast as you want in the wrong direction, or you can slow down and choose the right direction. And you might go a little
Yeah.
slower, but you're going to save a lot of time getting there.
Oh yeah, that's really good. It's really great advice. Final question in our rapid fire is, what is one thing that you would like to communicate to our audience of church leaders today?
I think the most important message that church leaders need to know today is that, whether or not you hear it every day or not, what you do is very important. And it's tough to stay encouraged in today's environment. So let me just encourage you, like you're needed, and the work you do every week is important, whether or not everyone's saying thank you. I want to say thank you for what you do.
That's really good. And I know that will be super encouraging to everyone who's listening today. Sam, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I love hearing your heart behind some of these things that people are seeing at their churches or, seeing on Instagram. It's not just something that's cool. It's something that's really heartfelt. So it's been really cool to hear your story and how they all came about. And I'd love for people to be able to connect with you more. Where can people follow you, or where can they find out more about what you have to offer?
Yeah, please just check us out. Follow us on Instagram at popsigns.co,
Okay.
or our website, popsigns.co. And you could also, if you wanted to place an order, you could say, we're going to give your audience a 20% discount on your order. Use the coupon
Amazing.
code LEADER.
Awesome. No, that's incredible. And I would encourage you, maybe if you're listening to this today and you've never seen these in action, that's a great way to do it, to look them up on Instagram or check out their website. They're just a whole lot of fun, and creating that fun welcome at your church is something that's so important. Sam, thank you so much for this today. It's been amazing. And I also just want to say to all of our listeners, thank you for being here with us today, for checking this out. And if it has been valuable to you as you've been listening and you think, yeah, this is, I know. I want to start implementing in our church. Something that would just help us out is to just share this with somebody. Maybe share this with somebody at your church. You've got a friend that's in ministry. Share this with them. All of those shares go a long way because we just want to get this in the ears of as many people as possible as we continue to help building and equipping healthy churches everywhere. And so definitely be sure to share. If you're not following us already, follow us and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcast. If you're watching today over on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a comment and let us know. Do you use any of these fun ideas at your church when you're welcoming people? We'd love to hear from you. And every little bit helps to get this in the ears of more and more church leaders. So, Sam, again, thank you to everyone who's listening. Thank you for being a part of this. We will see you all next time right here again on the Church Leadership Lab podcast.
This episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast is brought to you by Ministry Brands, the largest provider of church technology software. Over 90,000 churches rely on Ministry Brands for their single platform solution that brings together all the digital tools a church needs. From online giving to websites to church management software and more, Ministry Brands is leading the way in simple to use, innovative solutions, all with the goal of empowering healthy churches. To learn more, visit ministrybrands.com.